Speeding.
Today in Vegas, Blackmagic Design introduced a bunch of new features in DaVinci Resolve 19 that we'll be taking a look at. They have text-to-speech editor in DaVinci Resolve now, which is something that they had in Premiere Pro and something that we've been using Descript for, but it'd be nice to actually do that in the editor without having to export a version, process it externally, and all that sort of stuff. So having that happen actually in the timeline is gonna be very nice. Though I wonder how well it works. A lot of times the text-to-speech stuff is hit or miss, especially when you have multiple speakers. So that'll be something to try out. That's something I'm surprised about, actually. The fixed playhead option thing, which is something that's been in Premiere for a while, and actually a bunch of other editors. I'm surprised that DaVinci Resolve doesn't have that until now, which is a good thing that they caught up. Not something that I use. I know it's something that a lot of people use, but it's good that they now have that as well. I'm like not totally sure about like whether or not it's going to be useful until I try it, because it's like the color slice thing looks really cool, but also I'm not sure if that's like, how well is that going to work? Because they have all the hue saturation curve stuff, so I don't know if it'll be any different or better than that, because you can do that in hue and saturation, but I'm not sure if that's like, usually that means you'll be also moving the colors next to it. So if the color slice thing is really good at specifically targeting a color, then like, I can see it being good. The noise reduction thing has been super like just blanket. It's called voice isolation, and it just does that. It takes the voice, makes it sound like it's in a booth more or less, right? Eliminates every other sound, but like you heard in that other short film where it sounds like they're too close to the camera. This says that it's going to be able to separate ambience, background, and vocals, and you should be able to tune those to however you want. I wonder how well that's gonna work, but that could solve that issue of noise reduction being too aggressive, which is a lot of times you just need some, right? You just need to get rid of background stuff. But if it wipes everything else out in the back, it becomes more distracting in the background sound. So I am wondering very much like, because for years everyone says that. iZotope has a thing that does the same thing where you can mix and match the background stuff, and that works really well. But that's also something that like every noise reduction thing has been promising forever, is that like we do it and it sounds organic. So I wonder how that will work with this. I have a decently high expectations for it though, because the voice isolation in the timeline is really, really good. Yeah, tons and tons of like AI tracking stuff. It says AI, but really it's just like machine learning stuff. I bet it'll be better. But again, something you have to try. Everyone says that.
What would be like use cases for that?
We do it like, well, like, you know, when we do a lot of like tracking text onto backgrounds, or a lot of it color grading stuff, like you need like something's too bright or something's too dark, your background, that kind of thing, right? If you can have a really clean track, then that allows you to separate your layers, and then you can color grade your background differently than your foreground. A lot of times you want to introduce more like contrast or saturation in someone's face, but you don't want that happening in the background. So tracking those objects allows you to apply different things, but also just for stuff like you want to put a fake brand or logo on something, or you want to cover something up, or removing license plates. Track the license plate, get rid of it. So there's a lot of like utility stuff that isn't like putting in an effect. I bet it'd be good for effects, but most of the time when we use tracking, it's not for a VFX. It's just for like hiding something or getting rid of something. That is something interesting. They have a new noise reduction thing, the spatial noise reduction thing. So they're pretty good at it, but it sometimes makes the image look kind of like buttery and kind of bleh. So I'm wondering if that's going to be really good. It seems like it's a new section. It's called based on it's ultra neural engine, ultra noise reduction neural engine. So it sounds like new technology. If it's just like the same thing as before, I mean, that's good, but like if it's actually like a new noise reduction thing, because I know that like Premiere's noise reduction, like noise reduction that utilizes like your graphics processor has been gotten really good, but still has that sort of meh effect to it. So the fact that they're putting a new thing in here and it's under a new label, not instead of just like the previous version, but just better. I don't know, something to try out.
What's that meh effect?
It makes your image look muddy. Like if you ever like shoot something like if you like this gross kind of like cell phones do it a lot. Almost all cell phone video is really highly processed, because standard noise in a cell phone video is just like, it's super apparent. So almost all video from phones is very processed by the time you actually see it. And that's why a lot of things that like, they look like people's skin looks too smooth, and you lose a lot of detail in certain stuff, because in order to get a noisy image to an acceptable level, you have to do a lot of smoothing and getting rid of that noise. The noise reduction in DaVinci Resolve is pretty good for getting rid of stuff that's like in a consistent area, but it does end up having that effect where your skin is just too smooth and you lose detail. So it'd be interesting to see it like work really well. That's a really interesting one. Usually you end up like right now we've got like our process for color grading is the one that we've been using recently. You end up with 17 nodes or something like that, right? Really messy. So if the node stack thing allows you to actually like compartmentalize some of them, that would actually make it a lot cleaner. So I'm wondering how that works. That's just like an organizational thing. The film look thing is interesting. I think recently we've been looking at Dehancer to like look at the film illumination stuff, but the fact that they've also released this also makes me want to look into that. I don't know if it'll be as good. A lot of times they're like plug-in things are really good, but they're really good for something option that's not paid for. Where if you go into something that's sort of like, you know, someone's put like the company just does that thing, it'll look really, really amazing. But DaVinci Resolve is also kind of good at that, having their free stuff be just really, really good. That's just built into it. So the film look thing could look really great. They have a lot of, they said 60 parameters. That's actually, usually the more parameters you get, the better, the more granular. So it's probably gonna be up to the person using it then for how good it's gonna look and how much time you put into it. Okay, that's really interesting. They skipped over that really quickly though, but the facial tracking thing where you can do more than one face, that if that's good, is gonna be really important because tracking more than one person's face, especially like in a 2-shot when you're color grading it, you just end up using a mask, which is fine, right? But like if you can really specifically track someone's face and apply an effect just to their face and not the background, that's super useful, but not when there's 2 people because you can only do one face. But the 2 people face thing, that could make that way more useful in a lot more scenarios. So it looks like, DaVinci Resolve in the last couple of updates in 18 has been getting a bunch of like 3D stuff where you can incorporate universal 3D settings or setting scenes. So you can create something in like Blender or Maya or something like that, import it into DaVinci Resolve, and then you can render it in DaVinci Resolve, which really is like something that like Premiere doesn't do. Like it's one of those things that like that's not something that other editors do at all. So that kind of creates that own space for that. And now they're doing where you can do volumetric effects with like fire and smoke. And importing it from other things. So like you're not gonna be able to like make models in DaVinci Resolve, but that's fine because DaVinci Resolve is not a model maker thing. You can do that in somewhere else. But it makes you wonder when you import in those things, it'll be easier to composite that stuff, which would be really interesting because then you don't have to do the back and forth where you export from, like what I would do is I would export from DaVinci Resolve, go into Blender, use Blender's compositing thing, then go from there back into DaVinci Resolve. And so if anything needs to be changed, I need to do the whole thing again instead of just doing a 2-step process, which would be really cool. It makes you wonder if DaVinci Resolve is trying to do, because 3D is really becoming a big thing. So it makes me wonder if DaVinci Resolve is wanting to like dip its toes in that, or if it's really like legitimately being like, we will also do special effects stuff. I need to look at their ray tracing renderer in order to like check if that's good. But if it is good, that could be like a very legit like option for a lot of people about compositing effects. A lot of shape stuff for people who do motion graphics. We do motion graphics, but like really lightly, because I've just found like After Effects motion graphics stuff is just way easier. But I know I'm used to it. But also I know that there's a bunch of like basic limitations about like you can't warp a shape that you can do in After Effects. So it'd be cool if they caught up because then you don't have to do the back and forth thing a lot. There's a lot of things that I feel DaVinci Resolve could do that Adobe Creative Cloud now does, and so you're stuck having both. So it'd be nice if they could kind of chip away at some of that stuff because a lot of it's just like a basic thing, like warping a shape. Okay, yeah, so that one I think is gonna be really interesting, is the voice, background, and ambient separation. If that works really well, that can like eliminate issues with using voice isolation and then having it sound just too, it becomes a binary thing. You either use it or you don't, and then you end up with either noisy background sounds and you get the vocals, or you sound like your vocals just sound too clear. Because even their slider right now on the voice isolation thing is like kind of works. I mean, it's also, I feel like it's a weird, like it's back and forth. Like DaVinci Resolve's Fairlight now has an automatic ducker. I don't use an automatic ducker because they're usually really bad. And the fact that they don't have one until now is interesting because usually an automatic ducker thing is like something that everybody does, but everybody does it badly. So I wonder if they're gonna like, will it be good? Having the tracking thing where you can track your sound position based on the image thing, that's really cool. I was messing around with that in the in the last short film that we did, and having to go through and pan for everything, very annoying. Being able to track an object and then have that be assigned in the audio space would make going to a theater's like level of audio quality really quick. Instead of most of the time what just happens is people just leave it as stereo, and then you just end up with a stereo experience in a theater, but then you're not utilizing the fact that you have like a million speakers around you. So the fact that that makes that easier and is based on the image, because you're always trying to sync up your sound location with your image stuff. And 99% of the time, you just don't. You just forget about it. So that is kind of great. One of those things I think maybe only DaVinci Resolve can do, because having Fairlight and having an image tracker inside of your editing software, like even in Audition doesn't have anything to do with visuals. So having a visual tracker in Audition would be really weird, but having a visual tracker in DaVinci Resolve, something that already exists, and having the audio suite, it's like one of those things that like you would need to have both in order for that to work. Man, okay, so massive thing that I really wanted DaVinci Resolve. I really wanted a spectral frequency display, which is something that Audition has, that I keep going back to Audition to do when I have to do a tricky audio thing. If they had that, that would probably like, I would never need to go back to Audition, besides like other stuff. But 99% of the time when I go back to Audition, it's because of the spectral frequency display. So if they had that, that would really perfectly round that off. I'm a little sad that they don't have that by the end of it. Yeah, overall, I think it's a good update. A lot of good stuff. A lot of it is going to depend on how good like the AI tracking thing is. How good the AI separate, like a lot of like, and it's using AI, but it's just like procedurally learning stuff. But it's going to depend on the quality of that stuff. A lot of that stuff that they're talking about existed already. It's just like how, if it gets significantly better, and I feel like this is version 19, they went from 18 to 19, so I have a feeling it will be significantly better. And usually Blackmagic doesn't like, in my experience, they don't usually have a feature that does nothing. Like a lot of times, like Adobe will do that, where they'll be like, this thing does this, and you're like, it kind of does that. Like in a 5% way it does that. So I'm interested to look at how they actually work. We use most of that stuff on every project. We will do tracking, we will do like noise audio separation, we will do like the color slice thing. Like a lot of that stuff we would use. So I think pretty quickly we'll figure out whether or not that works or not.